terms of, obviously the previous model of development has failed. Looking in your own experience in the US and overseas, what do you see as alternative models for social and economic development? And perhaps where do you see signs of hope?
The main signs of hope today, I think, are probably in South America. In South America, for the first time in 500 years, since the European conquests, has begun to confront its fundamental internal problems. These are the traditional Latin American society has been sharply split between a wealthy, Europeanized, often white elite, which is quite wealthy, oriented towards abroad, no responsibilities for their own society, separated from the other societies of the region, and living in a real mass of misery and depression. Latin America does have substantial resources internal, but it has been a plaything for its wealthy elites and the imperial powers, the United States, in recent years. And those problems are beginning to be addressed. The countries are beginning to integrate with one another for the first time, which is a prerequisite for independence. And they've also begun to, in various ways, face some of their internal problems. Some of the examples are pretty striking, like Bolivia, where it's the poorest country of South America, but the majority of the population is indigenous, and about a decade ago they began to become sufficiently organized so that they were able to take significant steps towards controlling their own society and economy, and by 2005 even elect someone from their own ranks as president, Evo Morales, and he has just been re-elected with an even higher vote, partly because of the remarkably successful economic policies. Bolivia's had a quite impressive growth rate, I think the highest in Latin America, and for the first time the rights of the indigenous majority are being are gaining serious attention. The policies of the government involve control over resources, problems of cultural rights, which are very significant in a highly multicultural society, indigenous rights, problems of justice, and they're being the initiative for dealing with them is coming from substantial popular movements. These are democratic achievements which are hard to match elsewhere. There's plenty wrong with it. And of course the traditional elite is bitter and angry and backed by the United States, of course. So there's plenty of conflict. For example, the Obama administration has one of the farces that goes on in the world is called the drug war. And it is a farce. It has very little to do with drugs. But the Obama administration recently decertified 2 Latin American countries, claiming that they don't cooperate sufficiently in the drug war, but Bolivia and Venezuela, and clearly on political and ideological grounds. And that's one illustration of the hostility of the traditional elites and their traditional backer, the United States, in the face of popular movements that are really making substantial gains. Similar things are happening in Ecuador and different ways in Brazil and Argentina, and these are important moves. I'm sure there'll be plenty of setbacks. The problems are enormous, but it's it's substantial progress. I mean, Latin America was one of the most rigorous adherents to the neoliberal programs dictated by the United States, the IMF, and the World Bank, and suffered tremendously from them. But it has pretty much overthrown that and is moving towards independent development that could be successful. That's not a radical model by any means. That's a very moderate model, and I think there are things that can go much farther. So take, say, the United States, richest country in the world, incomparable advantages. It's been through 30 years of one of the, from some points of view, the worst economic period in its history. There's plenty of wealth, but it's concentrated in very few pockets. For the majority of the population, ever since the Reagan years, for the majority of the population, real wages have stagnated pretty much. In recent years have declined. The benefits have declined, working hours have increased, infrastructure is collapsing. These are, meanwhile, the economy is being financialized. Around 1970, maybe 3% of gross domestic product was produced by the financial industries. By now it's over a third. A corollary to that is that productive manufacturing is hollowed out, sent abroad, or just eliminated, which means decent jobs, decent work opportunities, reasonable life for families and communities. This has led to tremendous, first of all, it's led to a tremendous economic crisis that we're right in the middle of, and also real anger, populist anger, which is very understandable. While the population is suffering, not suffering by third world standards, but suffering relative to what ought to happen in a rich country. The financial industries are just booming. Profits are bigger than ever after a huge public bailout. Bonuses, they're giving away huge bonuses to their executives. And of course that creates a justified anger. And it could be very dangerous.
There's a similar anger in Ireland, I would say, and I'm just curious as to, when you look at that anger and the situation in the US and the situation in Ireland, and reference that to the experience in Latin America, what do you think that ordinary people in both our countries can learn from those experiences, and how can we organise and think differently?
It's strange to say, but I think we can learn a lot from the poorest and most repressed population in the hemisphere, namely the indigenous population of the poorest country in South America, Bolivia. They took their fate into their own hands and have succeeded. And, we're not Bolivia, obviously, but similar things can be done here. So take, for example, the manufacturing industry. I mean, that's the basis for a functioning manufacturing industry is going to be the basis for any successful society, advanced society. People think of manufacturing as kind of, old-fashioned, not high-tech. That's not true. Manufacturing is a very high-tech industry, in fact. But it does offer employment. It develops wealth. It creates the basis for communities to survive and flourish as manufacturing. But does it have to be displaced abroad in the interests of bankers? No, that's not a law of nature. That's a law of special form of neoliberal capitalism.